February 25th, 1206, District Court Defendant Lobby number 2. Sorry, Edgeworth. I didn't mean to get you in trouble. Don't worry about it. This is my problem, not yours. Hope I'm not interrupting anything, pals. Oh, guess I am. I'll come back later. Wait, Gumshoe, what is it? You got a lot of nerve, pal, making a detective run around while on duty. Okay, what did Miss Sky have you grab? On top of it, you call me here. You'd happier people at funerals. This is serious. You did this last time. I take it Lana's having you run errands again? Let me tell you, this is the last time, pal. Here, she asked me to give this to you if there was a break in today's trial. Evidence law? Edgeworth was talking about this just the other day. You must know the 2 rules of evidence law. Rule 1, no evidence shall be shown without the approval of the police department. Is that right, Mr. Wright? Seems so. You can at least study some evidence law, really. The chief prosecutor also wanted me to give you a message. A message? He said, if you're planning to take him on, you're gonna need this book. Yep. Guess I'll need to give this book a thorough read. Evidence law securely slipped in the pocket. We have really big pockets. Or it's a really tiny book. Doesn't look like that book will do you any good now, though. Hold on, Gumshoe, let me read it. Wah! No evidence shall be shown without the approval of the police department. Unregistered evidence presented must be relevant to the case on trial. Okay. So what that's saying is... there's a piece of evidence that we have that is not relevant to the case on trial. Or... that us trying to show something has to be relevant to the case on trial. The case being... Lana murdering Goodman. Right? So, the fact that they're bringing this up means that everything not connected to Lana murdering Goodman, I can potentially, or should, avoid. But there's so much stuff in there. Don't know what it's talking about. Because we just spent an entire whatever talking about SL9. That was the entire thing. None of that was relevant, except possibly in determining motive, which makes the entire other case relevant to this case. And I don't like it. Doesn't look like that book will do you any good now, though. All that's left now is the chief prosecutor's sentence. That's where you're wrong, detective. Huh? Haven't you figured it out yet? Why I'm still sitting in that prosecutor's seat? Despite all these allegations being thrown at me? Mr. Edgeworth. The real trial today hasn't begun yet. What? What else is there left to do? Your credibility's been all but ruined with this forged evidence you were unaware of. And the Sky found out you unwittingly caused a man's death. And now... what you're telling me... and now you're telling me you want to do more? Gotta be kidding me, pal. You're missing the point, detective. Lana didn't murder Detective Goodman. She merely stuck a knife into his dead body. That means the real killer is still out there. What? And we're going to expose him, no matter what it takes. This case has hurt too many people. It's time to bring it to an end. District Court, courtroom number 9. Court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Sky. Mr. Edgeworth? Yes, Your Honor? The Inquiry Committee is planning to impose harsh penalties for your actions. Thank you for the news, Your Honor. Yes, well... normally this is where the prosecution calls for a witness, but, this isn't easy to say. You see, there's some concern that you, Mr. Edgeworth, may have, struck a bargain. You think I may have manipulated the witnesses. I didn't say that. just, you see, everyone's been talking and... Very well, Your Honor. I have a solution. A solution? That being the case, the prosecution will allow the defense to call forth all further witnesses. What? There's no precedent for what you're proposing. Undeniably, this is an unusual arrangement, but a very effective one. It would prove that I haven't struck any deals with the witnesses. Well, Mr. Rat, what do you say? Unbelievable. Edgeworth has found a way to continue the trial. Very well. The defense accepts the prosecution's proposal. Then it's settled. The defense may now call forth the next witness. Mr. Wright? You realize this is your last chance. If you call the wrong witness, this trial is as good as over. Defense calls. Time's finally come to bring out the real murderer. Well, I mean, since you're telling me who to pick, I guess it has to be him. But you know, we could talk to Meekins. Bring out him. Lana? Alright, do it. Damon Gant. The defense calls Damon Gant to the stand. Damon Gant? What does he have to do with anything? As the defendant's partner 2 years ago, Mr. Gant has first-hand knowledge of the crime. I feel we should hear what he has to say about it. As luck would have it, he should still be in the courthouse. He would also be the least likely to have been manipulated by me in any way. Wouldn't you agree, Your Honor? True. Alright, bailiff, please escort Mr. Gant to the stand. Witness, please state your name and occupation. What is this, some kind of practical joke? I was just on my way to lunch. Your name and occupation, sir. Worthy, are you sure you want to do this? Your name and occupation. So, you want to play hardball, eh? Please, Mr. Gant? Fine. My name is Damon Gant. I'm the acting chief of police. Now then, Chief Gant, the court requests to hear your testimony. Oh, righto. What's with the grim face? First, let's clear up this SL9 incident. Oh, you mean that time when Lana's sister murdered that prosecutor? Personally, I think it's been made pretty clear already. There are still some things unaccounted for. Oh? Like what? Like the role you played in all this. Son, either you're very brave or very fool. You are aware, of course, that a police chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons? Sure, take my testimony for example. I don't have to give it if I don't want to. What? Is that true? I'm afraid so. The chief of police has the right to refuse to testify. Of course, such an action carries with it a certain risks. Don't worry, I'm not here to hinder your trial. Just remember, this turns out to be a big waste of time. Don't say I didn't warn you. Very well, the witness may now begin his testimony. Here we go. Right. SL9 incident. As I recall, Neil and I were questioning him that day. Make a long story short, he slipped up. That power outage didn't help either. When I went to my office, I found Lana there. Apparently she'd already arranged the crime scene. As you can see, I had nothing to do with the forgery. The power outage happened after he went away. That when Dark was arrested. Huh? He was lying on the floor unconscious. An innocent Neil flying, it seems Dark bumped his head. I see. Everything seems pretty clear-cut. The police chief has the right to refuse to testify, and it better hit him hard and fast. Oi. As I recall, Neil and I were questioning him that day. As I recall, a ceremony was held at the police department that day. Yes, that's right. I guess you could say I'm a workaholic. After winning his award, Neil was all fired up too. That's probably what spooked Dark. I keep reading it as Drake. It's getting real difficult. It made him run away like that. Was the defendant, Lana Skye, also present in the room? I don't quite remember. At the very least, she wasn't there when Dark ran for it. To make a long story short, we slipped up, the power outage didn't help. So the two of you ran immediately after him, right? That's right, but Dark made it to the elevator first. So Neil and I split up. He went upstairs and I went downstairs. I guess you could say he got lucky. What's this about a power outage? Oh, that. The elevator stopped all of a sudden and I got the shock of my life. Well, probably not as shocked as Neil was when that knife went in his heart. That's not funny. So I went to my office and found Lana there. Could you tell us what you saw? It was a shocking sight. Neil and that serial killer were lying in a heap on the floor, all tangled together. Dark was also lying collapsed on the floor. Yeah, apparently he hit his head and was knocked out. Next to them were those two poor girls. Lana and Emma. Lana was cradling Emma in her arms. Looking back at it now, she must have already known what her sister had done. Apparently she'd already arranged the crime scene. How can you know that? Because of the victim's body. It had already been moved. So that means... You found the body near Lana's desk? That's right. I think you said earlier, it was my suit of armor that really stabbed the prosecutor? Yes. Anyway. As you can see, I had nothing to do with the forgery. So you're saying the forgery had already taken place by the time you arrived at your office. That's exactly what I'm saying. I can understand how Lana must have felt. But moving a body and hiding evidence are inexcusable no matter what the circumstance. Is that how it really went down? Staring at the witness won't do you any good, Mr. Wright. You're going to stare at anything. Better off staring at the court record. Were they always the smooth talker? But which piece of evidence is ties Gant to the forgery? Lana did admit to forging evidence, but that can't be the whole truth. Somehow I've got to link him to the incident. I guess it'd be the jar shard, right, that we found in his safe? Because we've talked about the jar already. You claim you had nothing to do with the forgery. I'm afraid that's a claim you can't back up. Explain yourself. Several pieces of evidence were found in your office. Take this jar, for example. That's that blue badger you showed us earlier. A piece of this jar was discovered in your safe. Not only that, but the evidence list I presented earlier was actually found inside your desk. Found where? You see, Chief Gant, these are articles of evidence uncovered in your office. Both concrete proof that you played a part in the illegal investigation. Chief Gant, what's the meaning of this? Oh, here's a defense attorney who may even rival Worthy. So you admit it then? That you were involved in the forgery? Who? Me? Or do you mean you? Me? Why would I have anything to do with that? Well, you were the one who snuck into my office when you found this evidence. Prosecutors aren't the only ones capable of forging evidence, you know. Defense attorneys can do so too. Isn't that right, Wright? However, Detective Gumshoe was present during the investigation. Swervy, my boy. Not even detectives are exempt from the law. Rest assured, Dick will receive his due punishment. What? What? If Gumshoe's salary drops any further, he'll end up paying to work? Yes, well, in light of the detective's presence, please give us your testimony regarding these pieces of evidence you found in your office, and their relation to the forgery that took place at the crime scene. My, kids these days no longer know how to put two and two together. Let's see, what was it now? A jar fragment and a list. For all I know, you could have planted them in my office. Anyway, you can't prove when these pieces of evidence were discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. There's no reason I'd participate in a forgery. Rearranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Mr. Rat? Yes, Your Honor? When investigating the crime scene, you should have been more careful to observe protocol. You do understand that I am the chief of police, right? There will be consequences. Oh. Indeed, I believe I'll press charges so you won't make the same mistake again. My apologies, Chief, but would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know. Alright, Aji, in return though. I know that place, right? Huh? What are these guys, telepathic? Oh boy. Well, I know you could have planted them in my office. I'd appreciate it if you'd stop making these ridiculous allegations. Yeah, you do have a point. You wouldn't have the guts to do something like that. What? I'll have you know, back in the day I once broke into a cattle ranch and tipped. Mr. Wright, what are you saying? Anyway, you can't prove you didn't carry in the evidence, did you? Can you? If you have proof to the contrary, you're gonna need it later. Later? What are you talking about? What else? I'm talking about when Raito's prints are found. Yeah, if they're found inside my safe, that proves the investigation was illegal. Ever faced anyone as slimy as this guy? Anyway, you can't prove when those pieces of evidence were discovered. What do you mean by that? This is all purely hypothetical, of course. But suppose I did place those items in my safe. Such an act wouldn't necessarily constitute forgery. If concealing evidence found at a crime scene isn't forgery... I'm not through speaking yet, Righto. It all depends on when the evidence was discovered. If they were found after Dark was convicted, then they're worthless. Are you saying this jar fragment wasn't discovered in the initial investigation? It would appear not. After all, it wasn't listed in the evidence list. For all we know, it could have suddenly materialized the day after Dark was sentenced. Oh, and wouldn't that be convenient? Right? Chief is talking about a possibility. So long as you can't rule that out, the remarks, however clever they may be, will only succeed in wasting time. Tell me something I don't know. Come now, Wright. Think about it. There's no reason I participate in the forgery. How can you look me in the eye and say that? Because I'm innocent. Remember? Who was it that murdered Neil? I'm not sure I care for the word murder here. But in the end, the person responsible for Mr. Marshall's unfortunate demise was Emma Skye. Well, now do you see? Arranging the crime scene wouldn't help me out in any way. Really, Chief Gant? At the very least, there's one very large benefit you've reaped from all this. Oh? I wasn't aware. What is this benefit? That would of course be the position you have. Chief of Police. Oh. The resolution of the SL9 incident secured your promotion to Chief. That in itself is sufficient motive. That's a good one. Huh? Do you really think I'm that incompetent? What do you mean? Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little. Is that true, Edgeworth? Yes, he was going to be made chief anyway. Yeah. Be careful when pointing that finger, or you might wind up being the one pointed at. So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, you did it for someone else. Don't be silly, Werby, you know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There, it's out in the open now. Haji, would you mind if I change my testimony a little? By all means, please do. I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice. There is nothing in it for me. Nothing in it for you? Sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl, Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I felt sorry for her, you'd better think again. You're right. You don't feel sorry for anyone. You're tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised. You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though. That's a good one, Werby. Could there have been something in it for him? Given his selfishness, would he have helped someone out? Yeah. Point out accomplice. Sure, you might not help out anyone for their sake, but if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone. Mr. Rat, appears you're positively determined to portray the chief as a nice man who likes to lend people a hand. That's not what I mean. Very well then. It was this person you believe Chief Gant may have helped forge evidence. Well, it has to be Lana, but it doesn't seem as cut and dry as this current situation presents it. Chief Prosecutor Lana Sky, the defendant? I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Sky fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help her more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gant, he would also have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. The reason, of course, is self-profit. Self-profit? What do you mean? After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Sky was appointed Chief Prosecutor at the Prosecutor's Office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gant. But how would he profit from all of this? He'd be able to use the Chief Prosecutor as his puppet. Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations. You mean to tell me that despite the Chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets? What? Oh, wait. You must mean puppet as in someone forced to do his bidding. Never mind. Admit it, Chief. You assisted Lana Sky in forging evidence. Your motive to appoint her as Chief Prosecutor so you could control her. Right, my boy, you have quite an imagination. Let me ask you something. What? Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I've done such a thing? Lana, she's keeping quiet to protect Emma. There's no way she'd testify against Gant. I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture. Unless, that's also what happened in this incident. This incident? Or which one would that be? Of course I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The Chief Prosecutor has been acting strange throughout this entire trial. Almost as if someone has been controlling her. Harvey, you better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt. Just what do you mean? What he means, Your Honor, is that Chief Gant is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, the Chief is now making Lana take the rap in order to cover up his involvement. What? What? Order. I said order. Mr. Wright, can't be serious. Huh? This is an affront to the highest ranking officer in our law enforcement agency. To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder? That's impossible. Your Honor, I was merely reiterating what Mr. Edgeworth said in easier to understand language. It's too late, Mr. Wright. There's no turning back for us now. Looks like he's the one who's decided to go through with this. Can you prove this, Mr. Wright? That the Chief, as a high-ranking officer of the law, is involved in this murder? Good question. Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant's just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell. I see. Alright then. Let's see what Mr. Wright's got, and it better be good. Show us this evidence that ties Chief Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman. The only thing we haven't really played with yet is the 7s on the, data entry card thing. So, logically, if we can actually prove that that's him, we can say that he was in there on that day and messing with shit. Is the ID card list? Yeah, it's the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine the owner of yesterday. 7777777. Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number. It's your number. What? How do you know that? The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code. 7 digits. You don't mean. I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was 7777777. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list. Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. Order. Chief Gant, what do you have to say? Nothing. The defense's search of my office was in violation of regulations. And I will demand Mr. Wright be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card. Chief Gant, so you admit it. You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime? What about it? I'm chief of police. Whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom, what's the difference? I can go anywhere I want. Tell me, when you entered the room, were you alone? I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Detective Goodman wouldn't have happened to be with you that day, would he? Of course not. Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days. You hadn't seen him in days? Chief Gant, I'm afraid you've just undone yourself. On that day, you had to have met with Detective Goodman. What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt. No, it isn't, Your Honor. This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting? In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence. Show us proof that the victim went to meet with Chief Gant on the day of the crime. That had to be something from Goodman, right? Of that, we have him talking about evidence stuff. The screwdriver he gave to Edgeworth is interesting. And then his lost item report, but it doesn't say, he didn't fill it out. It can only be submitted to the chief of police, but we knew he went to talk with him, right? Or intended to do so? Do we have anything better? floor plans, a glove, the locker, Marshall's fingerprints, security video, all of which had to have taken place whenever Goodman was actually being stabbed to death, if we're saying that he did it. My attorney badge. Hopes and prayers. Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filled out a lost item report. He would have had to give that report to the chief of police. Yet you're in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if he filed it. He filed it. How do I know? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day. Yes, actually, because his thingy was open, and he's got fingers with the prints. They needed to? Yes, to transfer the evidence out. Oh. Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Gant. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room. Accompanied him. There's no other way the murderer and Detective Goodman could have entered the room. Hold on, let me guess what you're going to say next. I, the chief of police, murdered poor Goodman. Exactly. But wait, the chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card. Yeah. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of the sort. Sorry, but that's not possible. According to the record, your card was only used once. Yet you showed us your ID card earlier. If you'd really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body. Turning into lightning. Chief Gant, you didn't. The murder was most likely a spur-of-the-moment crime for no one in their right mind. To choose the police department as a place to commit murder. After the murder, you contacted Lana at the prosecutor's office. Why? To dispose of Detective Goodman's body, of course. You're forgetting, Mr. Wright. The victim's body was discovered in the prosecutor's office parking lot. How did he manage to move it there? I was at the police department the entire day, you know? And everyone's aware that Lana stayed at the prosecutor's office after the ceremony. Everyone except me, it seems. Still, you're the chief of police. You have an entire police force at your disposal. Oh, you think I just ordered an officer to do it? Hey you, take this here dead body over to the prosecutor's office. I don't think so. Chief Gant, you left all the evidence we need to prove how you moved the body to the prosecutor's office. Whenever he was having Edgeworth take the screwdriver, he put the body in the trunk somehow. Right? All this time I thought it was a useless clue just taking up space. We have very deep pockets. Got an entire vase in there. How could the chief have moved the body? Mr. Rat, show us the evidence. To move the victim's body, Chief Gant used this. Screwdriver. This is how we moved Detective Goodman's body. What's that? A screwdriver? What's this have to do with this case? Mr. Edgeworth, think back to the day of the crime. What is this screwdriver doing here? It's here because... I was asked to go. By Chief Gant, no less. He told me he wanted me to keep it here in the prosecutor's office. In any case, on the day of the stabbings, I brought this back here. After the ceremony ended that day, I didn't plan to return to the prosecutor's office. But you did, because Chief Gant asked you to. You mean the body was found in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car. I think it's obvious what happened. The body was moved by that car. Detective Goodman's body was carried in the trunk of Mr. Edgeworth's car? Yes, unless of course you have another explanation, Chief. Why else would you have asked Mr. Edgeworth to transport evidence from a closed case? There's only one plausible explanation. To transport the body to your accomplice, Miss Lana Sky. Order. What's going on here? Is there no room for rebuttal into the defense's outrageous accusations? Think back to the photograph Miss Starr took at the prosecutor's office. This was not a photo of the body being stuffed in the trunk to be taken away. It was exactly the opposite. It's a photo of the body being taken from the trunk. Chief Gant, please say something. I believe... your time's up. Not time's up. Sorry, Righto, but I'm having lunch with the District Attorney General after this. We have to get going if we're gonna make it in time for the early bird special. But the cross-examination isn't finished yet. Remember what I told you earlier? Police Chief has all kinds of weapons at his disposal. Weapons. Like the right to refuse to testify. I'm invoking that right now. What? This is not a right to be casually invoked. There are certain risks to be considered. So you're going to just run away after all this? Run away? Don't make me laugh, Worthy. I stabbed old Goodman, that's what you're saying, right? But if you had any conclusive evidence, you would have presented it by now. Well, You think I had Lana dispose of the body? If so, then show your proof and get it over with. I'll say it again, Mr. Wright. Damon Gant is the current Chief of Police. This court will not tolerate any accusations against him without concrete proof. Well, Mr. Wright, Your Honor, you have any concrete proof? Proof that Chief Gant murdered Detective Goodman and made Miss Sky dispose of his body? Do I have any proof? I really don't. I mean, I could potentially present the fingerprint thing with Emma, but that puts Emma in a lot of trouble. And it may not even work. So I've got nothing. It's no use showing evidence I'm not even sure of myself. No, Your Honor. At present, I have no conclusive evidence. See, Edgy? In that case, this court is forced to penalize you for your allegations against the chief. Uh-oh. What? Here's a tip. Never gamble what you can't afford to lose, righto? It seems that Lady Luck was on my side again today. Okay, Edgy. I'll leave the rest to you. I warned you earlier, Mr. Wright. This is an affront to a senior officer in our nation's law enforcement agency. What? Lady Luck, huh? Maybe we should have a word with her. Mr. Edgeworth, what do you mean? There's one lady who knows the real truth behind this trial. You haven't yet had the honor of hearing her testimony. A lady who knows the truth. Another witness. In the absence of conclusive evidence, the only other method of proof is testimony. But Chief Gant has invoked his right to refuse to testify. There's still someone else. One more witness who can answer all the questions. Raised in this trial, someone right in this very room. Mr. Edgeworth, who is this person? Why are you asking me, Your Honor? Have you forgotten? The defense is the one calling witnesses today. Mr. Wright, does such a witness exist? She may not be willing to tell the truth, but we can't just stop now. Yes, Your Honor, the defense calls for Lana, get in here. We got shit to figure out. Defendant. Miss Lana Sky? She was in the underground parking lot at 5:15 on February 21st. Her task, to dispose of the victim's body. In accordance with a certain someone's orders. Mr. Edgeworth. The prosecution has no objections, Your Honor. Very well. The court will now take its final recess for the day. 15 minutes, we will reconvene to hear the defendant's testimony. This court's now in hold on. Huh? Chief Gant, I thought you were going to eat. Listen good, Lana. He's talking to Lana. I don't think you need me to tell you this, but if you accept Mr. Wright's claims, there will be terrible consequences. That's right. Your sister will be found guilty for Neil Marshall's murder. This isn't good. Of course, you'd never support such outrageous claims anyway, right? Just something to think about. Alright then. I've got a lunch date to meet. Okay, if there aren't any other further objections, this court's now in recess. Yippee. February 25th, 204. Looks like we managed to stay in the game. Yeah, thanks to your help, Edgeworth. That chief. He's something else, eh, pals? Detective Gumshoe. I'm not a detective anymore. Oh yeah, sorry about that. No, don't worry. We've already decided where to work now. Your office. My office? I'm honored. Sure. I'll take the place of that top-knotted girl you used to work with. You know, I'm not opposed. What do you mean? Maya. Still, looks like we're all out of moves now. Chief can't stand it again. As he always gets the upper hand. Okay, you better, step 1, join me in the defense room next time. I need your moral support. It's not fair he has the right to refuse to testify. Settle down, Wright. Remember what the judge said? Chief, that's not a right to be casually invoked. There are certain risks to be considered. Risks? What did he mean by that? It's simple. If the chief refuses to testify, the opposite also holds true. You mean he forfeits his right to say anything too? Emma, are you okay? Yeah, when I came to, I was in the medical office. I've been listening to the trial from the gallery. So she heard everything that's been going on. Emma, I'm sorry for what I said before. No, don't be. It was the truth. You know, it's funny. I almost feel somehow relieved. Relieved? Yeah. Now I finally know what really happened. I think that all this time, my sister was being blackmailed by that terrible man. And she did it all just to protect me. Ever since her appointment as chief prosecutor, everyone who knew her said she changed. Perhaps it was easier that way for her. What do you mean? What do you think I mean? To follow Chief Gant's orders. She has to shut herself up deep inside. Force herself to do anything and everything the chief told her to do. I don't see why she became so cold. It's all my fault. It's all because I murdered Mr. Marshall. Hey, don't go blaming yourself now. If you want to blame anyone, blame society, pal. You can't maybe able to fool everyone else with his forgery, but you can't fool my memory. I remember now, I knocked Mr. Marshall into that armor. Let's see. Well, we better get back in time for the final act. Emma, why don't you wait? No, I'm going with you. I want to be there. When Lana tells the truth. Let's go, Wright. It's time to end this. To be continue? Oh no. We have to be nearing the end of this now, right? Have to.